My husband kicked me out, believing his son's lies from his first marriage. 3 weeks later, he asked if I had changed my mind, but instead I handed him the divorce papers. His son went crazy with anger. I was standing in the downpour, soaked to the skin, my hair stuck to my face, and my makeup must have smeared black. But I didn't care. I couldn't take my eyes off the house where yesterday was my home, my family, my life. Now the door was locked, and my key no longer fit in the lock. "Dexter!" I shouted again, pounding my fist on the door. "Please, let's talk." "This is crazy." There was no response. I stepped back a few steps and looked up, looking at the second-floor windows. In one of them, Noah's bedroom window, my stepson's face appeared. Noah was looking at me with an expression that could only be described by one word: triumph. The corners of his lips were slightly raised, his gaze cold and arrogant. When our eyes met, he didn't even try to hide his pleasure. And then he simply lowered the blinds. My heart clenched with pain and rage. How did we get to this point? An hour ago, I was a wife, a stepmother, the owner of this house. And now, I'm standing in the rain with a single bag of hastily packed clothes that Dexter let me take. "Get out of my house right now!" he shouted, his face, usually calm and reasonable, distorted with anger. "How could you? How could you steal from me and touch my son?" "Dexter, I swear I didn't steal anything, and what Noah is saying is a lie, a complete lie." Despair gripped me as I tried to touch his arm, but he pulled away. "I have proof, Evelyn. The money disappeared from the account, and you were the only one who had access to it, and Noah showed me the messages, the ones you wrote to him. It's disgusting. You're 35 and he's 17. He's a kid." "What messages?" "Dexter, I never—" "That's enough." He opened the front door. "You have 20 minutes to pack what you need. I'll send the rest later. The locks will be changed today." "You can't just throw me out," I whispered, feeling my lips tremble. "Not after what you've done," he snapped. "And thank God I'm not calling the police." Now, standing in the downpour, I was trying to understand how my life could fall apart in one day. I turned around and saw a man in a security uniform drive out of the garage, probably the one who changed the locks. He nodded at me with a mixture of curiosity and pity. His gaze made me feel dirty, disgraced, even though I hadn't done anything I was accused of. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly that I could barely dial. My fingers left wet marks on the screen. "Haley?" My voice broke. "I need help." "Evelyn? What's wrong?" she asked worriedly. "Dexter, he threw me out of the house. I don't have anywhere to go." "Oh God, stay where you are. I'm leaving," Haley said without hesitation. I got in the car, started the engine, and turned the heat up to full blast. As I waited for Haley, I tried to process what had happened. The money. The message. Dexter's business was booming. He owned a chain of organic cosmetics boutiques. Noah. This guy had never really accepted me, but in the last few months, his hostility had become almost tangible. But to accuse me of sexual harassment? I shuddered at the thought. 15 minutes later, Haley arrived. She stepped out into the rain without an umbrella and opened the door on my side. "Oh my God, you're all wet. What the hell is going on?" "I'll tell you on the way," I replied, getting into the passenger seat. As we pulled away from the house, I couldn't help but look back. Was it really over? Was Dexter and I never going to— "Evelyn," Haley's voice snapped me back to reality. "Tell me." "Dexter accused me of stealing money from the company account, and—" I couldn't say it out loud. "So?" Haley frowned, giving me brief glances as she drove. "He says I sent Noah inappropriate messages, trying to seduce him or something. Haley, that's a bloody lie. I didn't do any of that." "I know you didn't," she said firmly. "I've known you for 10 years, Evelyn. You would never." Her confidence calmed me down a little, but the feeling of unreality of what was happening didn't go away. "Noah." "It's definitely him," I whispered. You should have seen his face when I was standing in the rain. He looked pleased. The kid's always been a little weird, Haley said. But to accuse you of this? How could Dexter believe it? He says he has proof. Something about money and some texts I allegedly wrote to Noah. That doesn't make any sense. You would never take someone else's money. And my God, sexting a 17-year-old? Seriously? Haley shook her head. Dexter's known you for 5 years. How could he believe something like that so quickly? I closed my eyes, feeling tears streaming down my cheeks. I don't know. He was so angry. I've never seen him like that. We'll figure it out, Haley assured me, squeezing my hand. Haley's house was cozy and warm, the exact opposite of the cold rain outside. She immediately took me to the bathroom, gave me towels and dry clothes. Take a hot shower, change, and then we'll talk, she said. Standing under the hot water, I finally allowed myself to cry for real. Sobs shook my body, mixing with the water running down my face. How could Dexter lose his trust in me so quickly? 5 years of marriage, didn't they mean anything? He didn't even give me a chance to explain. He just believed his son's words. After my shower, wrapped in Haley's warm pajamas, a little short for me, but dry and soft, I went into the kitchen. Haley put a cup of hot tea with honey in front of me and sat down across from me. Okay, let's think this through, she said, in the practical tone she always used in crisis situations. Dexter has accused you of stealing money and sexually assaulting Noah. Both accusations are complete nonsense. The question is, why would Noah do that? I shook my head slowly. He's never fully accepted me, but lately he's been particularly hostile. Maybe it has something to do with Dexter wanting to put me in his will. Yeah, Haley raised an eyebrow. Money. It's a classic motive. The boy is afraid of losing his inheritance. But accusing me of molestation? That's a bit much, I shuddered. He knew that just stealing might not be enough to make Dexter turn his back on you completely. But sexual harassment of a minor? That's more serious. What am I supposed to do now, Haley? I asked, feeling completely at a loss. My husband kicked me out of the house. I didn't even have time to get all my things. Most of my papers are still there. First, get some rest, Haley said firmly. We'll call a lawyer tomorrow. Dexter can't just throw you out of the house, even if you really did do what he's accusing you of. And second, we need to find out what kind of evidence he has. I nodded, but I felt too exhausted to think about it right now. Can I lie down? I don't think I can do anything else tonight. Of course. Haley hugged me. The guest room is ready. Tomorrow, everything will seem clearer, I promise. But lying in a strange bed, in a strange room, I couldn't sleep. Images of the day kept replaying in my head. Dexter's face distorted with anger. Noah's triumphant smile. My things hurriedly shoved into my bag. Rain running down my face, mixing with tears. 5 years. 5 years of marriage, and it was all over in one day because of a teenager's lie? I remembered how I met Dexter, how I fell in love with his intelligence, his kindness, his restrained humor. I remembered our wedding, small but so happy. The first months of our life together, when Noah and I were still trying to get along. When did everything go wrong? Suddenly my phone vibrated, a message from Dexter. My heart leapt, but the words I read were cold and businesslike. I packed the rest of your things. You can pick them up tomorrow between 12 and 2. I'll be at work. Give the keys to the security guard. No questions. No, how are you? Or where are you? No hint of doubt in his decision. It was as if he had erased me from his life in one motion. I put the phone down without answering. Tears flowed down my cheeks again, but this time quieter, more hopeless. I had lost not only my home, but also the man I loved, all because of a lie he had so easily believed. The last thought I had before exhaustion finally took over was that I didn't even know where to start putting my life back together. I woke up to the sun's rays breaking through the unfamiliar curtains. A moment of disorientation, where am I, was followed by the painful realization that I was in Haley's guest bedroom. Yesterday's events came flooding back, and I felt that burning shame again as Dexter looked at me as if I were something disgusting. I rolled over to the other side and stared at the wall. How did we get to this point? When did everything start to fall apart? I met Dexter 6 years ago in an online support group for bereaved people. He was a widower. His wife Caroline died of cancer when Noah was 12. I came to the group after a broken engagement. I found my fiancé Eric in bed with our mutual friend 2 months before the wedding. Of course, our losses were different in scale. Dexter lost his beloved wife, the mother of his child. I lost only illusions about a man who, as it turned out, never really loved me. Pain is pain, Dexter wrote to me in a private message after I spoke out for the first time in the group, and someone accused me of being dramatic. His support meant a lot. We began to correspond separately from the group, first about our losses, then about everything in the world: books, movies, work, dreams. He was sensible, wise, with a subtle humor that broke through his restraint. Gradually, I began to look forward to his messages, waking up thinking that we would talk again today. After 3 months of online communication, we met in a small coffee shop halfway between our cities. I was nervous like a teenager and almost missed him. A man with a neat beard, wearing a blue sweater and jeans, with barely noticeable gray hair on his temples. His eyes, warm brown eyes, smiled before his lips when he saw me. Evelyn? His voice was exactly as I'd imagined, deep and calm. Dexter, I replied, feeling my heart pounding. It's nice to finally meet you in person. We talked for 4 hours, not even noticing when the waiters started clearing the neighboring tables. He told me about Noah, about his business, which was still small at the time, just 2 organic cosmetic stores. I need a good accountant, he said half-jokingly at the end of the meeting. Maybe it's fate, I smiled, feeling something warm spread inside me. For the first time since Eric's betrayal, I felt like I might be able to trust someone again. Our relationship developed slowly but surely. Every weekend we met somewhere in between our cities. Either I would come to him or he would come to me. After 5 months, we started talking about me moving to his city. Another month later, he introduced me to Noah. I was more nervous about this meeting than I was about my first date with Dexter. The boy was 14, that difficult age when you are no longer a child, but not yet an adult. He had also lost his mother, and I was afraid that he would perceive me as a threat to her memory. But everything went better than I expected. Noah was polite, even friendly, tall and thin, with the same brown eyes as his father, but more alert. He shook my hand and even smiled when I gave him a new video game. Cool, he said, looking at the cover. Thanks. Dad said you work with numbers? Yes, I'm an accountant, I confirmed. I like math too. He seemed almost shy. I have the best grades in the class. Dexter watched us with an expression of quiet happiness and relief. Later, when Noah went to his room, he hugged me. It's okay, he accepted you. I nodded, feeling relieved. But somewhere deep inside, I couldn't shake the thought that everything had gone too smoothly. In the first months after I moved in with Dexter, everything had seemed almost perfect. Noah was friendly, sometimes even asking me to help him with his math homework. The 3 of us had dinner together, went on picnics, and watched movies on Fridays. I tried to be delicate, not to impose my presence, to respect the habits and traditions that he and Dexter had developed. Noah seemed to appreciate this. Dexter and I got married a year after we met. A small ceremony, just our closest friends and family. Noah was my father's best man, and although he looked a little uncomfortable in his tuxedo, he stood by me with pride. I remember how he raised a toast. To my dad and his new wife. I hope you will be happy. But something changed after the wedding. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Noah began to pull away. His answers became shorter, his gaze colder. He was locking himself in his room more and more often, or staying over at his friends' houses. It's just adolescence, Dexter said when I shared my worries. He's 15, hormones, finding himself. It's nothing personal. I believed him because I wanted to. But then strange things started happening. First, my favorite earring disappeared. A gift from my grandmother. a silver one with an aquamarine. I looked everywhere for it, but never found it. I must have lost it somewhere, I thought. Then there was my blouse, an expensive silk one that I wore only for special occasions, that suddenly turned out to have a bleach stain on it. A laundry accident, I decided. But when my laptop, which I was working from, suddenly fell off the table when no one else was home, I began to suspect that these accidents were not so accidental. "I didn't touch your laptop," Noah said calmly when I asked him cautiously. I couldn't prove he was lying, but I couldn't believe it either. I'd never left my laptop on the edge. Dexter stood between us, trying to be fair, but I could tell he was having a hard time not taking his son's side. "Evelyn, are you sure you couldn't have just forgotten?" he asked quietly. "You know how careful I am with my work tools." Noah said he hadn't touched it. Why would he lie? Why? I asked myself this question more and more often as I watched the way Noah looked at me when he thought I couldn't see. There was something cold and calculating in that look, not at all adolescent. Over time, these incidents became more frequent. For some reason, my important documents were not where I left them. Once I found out that someone had reset my work email password. Good thing I had two-factor authentication. Sometimes there were misunderstandings between me and Dexter. I seemed to say one thing, and he heard something else, especially when it came to plans concerning Noah. "But you said you couldn't go to his school concert." Dexter frowned. "No, I said I would try to reschedule a client meeting," I replied, confused. "It's okay," he sighed. And always, after such incidents, I would catch Noah's subtle smile. He provoked fights, but so subtly that Dexter didn't notice. I tried to improve my relationship with my stepson. I invited his friends to our house, cooked his favorite dishes, and took an interest in his hobbies. Sometimes it seemed that the ice was melting. He could talk enthusiastically about a computer game or a book, but then he would shut down again, especially when Dexter was around. On his 16th birthday, I gave him an expensive watch. He thanked me with impeccable politeness, but I never saw the watch on his wrist. "It's not his style," Dexter said. "Just a teenage desire to be different," I reassured myself. Months passed, and our family found a certain rhythm. I was working at an audit firm. Dexter was developing his business. He opened 3 more stores and planned to expand further. Noah was doing well in school, though without much enthusiasm, and spent a lot of time in his room at the computer. Outwardly, we looked like a normal family. Breakfast together before school and work, dinners when everyone was home, weekends, often together. Although Noah was increasingly finding reasons to be somewhere else. Dexter sometimes worried that his son was too withdrawn, but he reassured himself that he had friends, good grades, and no problems with the law or drugs. "He's just an introvert, like me at his age," Dexter said. I might have believed him if it weren't for the occasional incidents, and the look I sometimes caught on my face. Cold, calculating, almost adult. Everything changed a month before Dexter threw me out of the house. He came back from a meeting with his lawyer, looking serious and thoughtful. "Everything okay?" I asked when we were alone. "Yeah, just updating some paperwork." He paused. "I put you in my will." I froze with a cup of coffee in my hands. "Will?" "Dexter, you're only 44. You're in perfect health." "It's not that," he smiled. "It's just a smart move. The business is growing. New assets are being acquired. I want you to be protected in case something happens." "What about Noah?" I asked cautiously. "Of course, he gets most of it," Dexter said quickly. "But you're my wife. You're entitled to some of it." I didn't pay much attention to this conversation. It was just normal financial prudence. But that evening, I overheard a conversation between Dexter and Noah. I was walking down the hall to my bedroom when I heard their voices coming from Dexter's office. "Dad, it's not fair." Noah sounded tense. "Mom wanted me to have everything." "Your mom wanted me to be happy," Dexter replied quietly. "And I am happy with Evelyn. She's part of our family." "She's not family." Noah's words were like a slap in the face. "And your mom has been with you for 15. Noah, I understand how you feel, But my decision is final. You'll get most of it, but Evelyn will get her share too. How much? There was something in Noah's voice that made me feel scared. It's none of your business, Dexter cut him off. I walked quietly to the bedroom, trying not to give away my presence. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time, thinking about what I had heard. Of course, I understood that Noah could be jealous. It was natural. But there was something in his tone that was more than just teenage resentment, something dangerous. The next day, Noah was unusually polite to me. He asked me how my day was, even offered to help me with dinner. But his eyes were ice cold. For the next month, I felt like I was walking through a minefield. Noah became overly nice in Dexter's presence, but when we were alone, his expression changed. You know, my dad is very trusting, he said one day when we ran into each other in the kitchen late at night. He always takes people at their word. Yeah, he's a good man, I replied cautiously. Too good. Noah looked at me directly. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and walked away. But his words stayed with me like a premonition of trouble. And then came that terrible day when everything fell apart. Dexter came home earlier than usual, a pale rage on his face, accusations thrown in my face, and finally, my bag of clothes, and I find myself outside our house in a downpour. Lying in Haley's guest room, I tried to understand what had happened. How could Noah have tampered with the evidence? What kind of messages did he show his father? And how could he have faked stealing the money? I didn't even have access to Dexter's company accounts. And the most painful thing was, how could Dexter so easily believe I was guilty? 5 years together, and he didn't even give me a chance to explain or defend myself. He just threw me out of our lives, as if I had never meant anything to him. I turned to the other side and wiped away my tears. That's enough. Tomorrow I will start acting. I'm going to find out what exactly I'm being accused of, find proof of my innocence. I'm going to make Dexter listen to me. I'm not going to let Noah ruin my life out of jealousy and greed. But as I closed my eyes, I couldn't shake the image of Noah's triumphant gaze from the second-story window as I stood in the rain, thrown out of my own home. It had been 3 days since Dexter had thrown me out of the house. 3 days when I barely left Haley's room, answering her caring questions with short, "I'm fine," and "I don't want to talk about it." I just existed as if in a fog, revisiting the same thoughts hundreds of times. On the 4th day, I woke up with a strange feeling of clarity. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. You look different, Haley said when I came into the kitchen, washed, dressed, and even wearing a little makeup. I've decided to fight, I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Noah can't just ruin my life. Good for you. Haley nodded in approval. I thought about it. Dexter accused me of stealing money, but I didn't even have access to his company's accounts. Who could help me sort out the financials? Victor, I suddenly remembered. Victor Klein was an old friend of Dexter's, the chief accountant of his company from the very beginning. We weren't close, but we always got along well, especially when it came to finance or accounting. It wasn't hard to find his number. But what to say? Hi, Victor. My husband thinks I stole money from the company. I needed some kind of approach. In the end, I just called. After 3 rings, he picked up the phone. Victor Klein here. Victor, this is Evelyn. My voice sounded tense. I need your help. A short pause. Evelyn. Yes. I heard what happened. Dexter. Everything you heard from Dexter is not true. I interrupted. I need to talk to you, in person. Another pause. A longer one. I don't know if this is a good idea. Victor, I didn't steal anything, I swear. If anyone can help me prove it, it's you. Sigh. Okay. Meet me at the Blue Moon Cafe at 2 o'clock. It's far enough away from the office that no one knows us there. He hung up before I could say thank you. Blue Moon turned out to be a cozy coffee shop in the old district of the city. Victor was already waiting for me at a table in the corner, nervously tapping his fingers on the table. He was in his mid-50s, with sharp features and penetrating gray eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. "I'm sorry I agreed to meet in secret," he said instead of greeting me, "but the situation is delicate." "Thanks for coming." I sat down across from him. "Dexter accuses me of stealing." "But I didn't have access to the company's accounts." Victor nodded. "That's why I agreed to meet with you." "Something doesn't add up. About $30,000 are missing, in small amounts over the last 3 months." "Then why is Dexter blaming me?" "Because someone created a false trail." Victor lowered his voice. "Transactions were made from your home computer's IP address, often at night or when Dexter was at work. The money was transferred to an account opened in the name of a mercer at a bank in a neighboring city." I felt myself flushing. "But it wasn't me!" "Someone set me up." "I know," Victor suddenly said. "I checked the system logs. Dexter's password was used to log in, not yours. And the transactions have a certain handwriting. Something tells me a teenager did it." "Noah," I whispered. "But how do I prove it?" Victor looked around, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. "I can give you the details of all the transactions, times, amounts, IP addresses, if you can prove that you were somewhere else during some of them. I have a Google account history. It records all my movements." "That'll help," Victor nodded. "One more thing. The account to which the money was withdrawn was opened with false documents, but I found out that the money was withdrawn from it through an ATM near Noah's school. There are cameras there. Victor, you have no idea how important this is to me. I just want the truth to come out." He looked tired. "Dexter is my friend, and if his son is doing this kind of thing—" "Thank you," I squeezed his hand. The next step was to try to talk to a few of Dexter's friends and colleagues, but I encountered a wall of silence and distrust. Most of them avoided my calls or responded coldly and discreetly. "I don't want to get involved," said Peter, Dexter's tennis partner. "This is between you two." "Dexter is very upset," said Martha, his assistant. "I don't think it's appropriate right now." "Evelyn," she sounded tense on the phone, "if you really did do these things, you're going to have to tell me." "A baby, Evelyn?" "Cynthia, you've known me for 5 years," I exclaimed. I don't know what to think. Dexter showed me these messages. They were very explicit." "What kind of messages?" I felt my heart pounding. "What did they say?" "I don't want to go over it." Cynthia cut me off. I need time. We all need time." And she hung up. I was left alone with my despair and outrage. How quickly people believed the worst about me. How easily they turned away. Unexpected support came from where I least expected it. Eleanor, Dexter's mother, called me herself. "Evelyn, where are you?" She sounded concerned. I was taken aback. Eleanor was a reserved, traditional woman who rarely interfered in her son's life. "I'm at Haley's," I replied, still stunned. "But Eleanor, didn't Dexter tell you?" "Nonsense," she interrupted. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Eleanor showed up exactly as promised, an elegant 70-year-old woman with gray hair, pulled back in a neat bun, and penetrating eyes that looked just like Dexter's. "Tell me everything," she said, as she sat in a chair in Haley's living room, a cup of tea in hand. And I did. About Noah, about his gradual hostility, about the strange incidents, about the will, about Dexter's accusations, and my shame when he threw me out of the house. Eleanor listened without interrupting, her face growing increasingly grim. "I always knew there was something wrong with that boy," she said quietly when I finished. "Even when he was little, there was something cold about him. Caroline spoiled him too much, and Dexter felt so guilty after she died that he couldn't be strict. But to go this far—" "Do you believe me?" I asked, feeling something tighten in my throat. "Of course!" Eleanor touched my arm. "Evelyn, I know you. You love my son. You would never do anything to hurt him or his child." Her words pierced me with warmth, the first ray of hope in these terrible days. "Thank you," I whispered. But what do I do? You need proof, Eleanor said firmly, and I'm going to help you find it. With the help of Victor and Eleanor, the next few days turned into a real investigation. Victor provided me with documents about all the suspicious transactions. I compared them with my location history on Google. During many of the transfers, I was at work or in other places, far from home. Eleanor helped me get video from an ATM near Noah's school, and it clearly showed him withdrawing money from a fake account. But the hardest part was dealing with the messages that I was allegedly sending Noah. I didn't even know what they were or what they looked like. I have an idea, Eleanor said one evening. Dexter is going to a conference tomorrow for the weekend. Noah will be alone. I'll pick him up for dinner and you can come over to the house. You're suggesting I break in? I was shocked. It's still your house, Eleanor said. Besides, I have a spare key. So the next evening, I found myself in an empty house that had been my home just a week before. It felt strange to be here as a thief, slipping through the corridors, as if I had no right to be here. I went straight to Noah's room. It was locked, of course, but Eleanor had foreseen that. Among the keys she gave me was one that unlocked all the internal doors. His room looked as usual, a bit of a mess, teenage style, with video game posters on the walls. I didn't know where to start. I couldn't just turn on his computer. It was probably password protected. But I was lucky. There was a tablet on the table, and when I pressed the power button, the screen lit up without asking for a password. Obviously, Noah didn't expect someone to go through his stuff. I started checking his messages, emails, and browser history. And in 20 minutes, I found what I was looking for. A program to simulate correspondence that allowed me to create fake screenshots of dialogues. And there were saved templates, conversations between me and Noah. What I read made me blush with shame and anger. Blatant suggestions, hints, ambiguities. All allegedly from my side, using my name and photo. I took pictures of the screen with my phone, then checked my browser history. Noah was looking for information on how to imitate an IP address, how to open a bank account with fake documents, how to withdraw money without leaving a trace. As I was hastily gathering all the evidence, I heard the sound of the front door opening. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest. Noah was back early. I ran out of his room, quietly closed the door, and hid in the bathroom. But the voice I heard was not Noah's. I'll just grab my papers quickly and leave, Dexter said on the phone. It was my husband. He was in the house. I could hear his footsteps coming up the stairs. I had to decide whether to hide or meet him. Before I could think about it, the bathroom door opened and we came face to face. Dexter froze, his eyes widening in surprise, which quickly turned to anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. I straightened up, trying to look confident, even though my knees were buckling. "I found evidence, Dexter." "Noah's lying. You broke into my house to keep lying?" His voice was icy. "Our house," I said quietly. "And I'm not lying. Look." I showed him the phone with the photos of Noah's tablet screen. Dexter reluctantly took it and started flipping through the pictures. His face changed from disbelief to doubt, from doubt to embarrassment. "It could be a fake," he said, but without the same confidence. "Victor can confirm that Noah stole the money. We have ATM video of him withdrawing money from an account opened under the fake name A. Mercer. I have proof that I was physically unable to make those transfers." "I love you, Dexter," I said quietly, "but how easily you believed the worst about me. It hurts." He looked up, his eyes hurt and confused. I don't know what to think. The evidence seemed so overwhelming." "Noah is your son. Of course you wanted to believe him." I took a step toward the door. "I'll send you all the evidence. Think about it, and then decide who you really believe." I left the house and got into Haley's car, which I had borrowed for this mission. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely put the key in the ignition. That evening, I sent Dexter an email with all the evidence I had gathered, from bank statements to ATM videos, and I waited. His response came 2 days later. We need to talk. Tomorrow at 3 in Riverside Park. The park was quiet and almost empty. A weekday, people at work. Dexter was waiting for me by the fountain, hands in his pockets, face tense. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. "Thanks for coming," he said when I approached. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," I replied, keeping my distance. We sat down on a bench, staring at the fountain rather than at each other. "I talked to Victor," Dexter began. "He confirmed everything you said about the money. And I went through Noah's tablet. I found that app, the search history." I kept quiet, waiting. When I asked him, Dexter's voice trembled. He confessed. Not right away, of course. At first he denied everything. But once he realized I'd seen the evidence. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I know how much this must hurt you." Dexter turned to me, tears shining in his eyes. "Evelyn, I don't know what to say. How do I apologize for what I did? I believed the worst, without giving you a chance to explain." I looked at him, the man I had loved for 5 years, and felt a strange emptiness inside. Yes, he trusted Noah's words. Yes, he acted as a father wanting to protect his child. But still. "You threw me out, Dexter," I whispered, in the rain, without even hearing me out. 5 years together, and you so easily believed I could betray your trust and harm your family. I was stunned, not thinking clearly. "But you did," I shook my head. "And you know what's worse? When you accused me, I saw more than just anger in your eyes. There was disgust, like you'd always suspected I was capable of something like this, and you were just waiting for confirmation." "I didn't," he argued, but he sounded unsure. "Did I?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Dexter, I've never given you a reason in my life to doubt my loyalty or honesty. Ever. And yet you were so quick to believe the worst." "What now?" he asked softly. "Evelyn, I want to make this right. You can come home. We can start over." I took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to do that, to return to our life, to forget this nightmare. But another part of me knew it was impossible. "I don't know, Dexter. What happened? It changed something between us. I'm not sure I can trust you again. And Noah, he's still your son. He's still going to live with us." "I'm going to send him to boarding school," Dexter said quickly. "And he's going to see a therapist." "It's not just that," I shook my head. "I need time to think about this, space to myself." Dexter nodded, looking confused and unhappy. "I understand. Just don't make a decision in the heat of the moment, okay? I love you, Evelyn. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you." We parted without coming to a decision. I went back to Haley's, and he went back to the empty house, where I realized Noah was now walking around like a man down, knowing that his plan had failed. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time, replaying our conversation in my head. Could I forgive Dexter? Could we be a family again? Could he ever truly trust me? And could I ever truly trust him? The next morning, I called the lawyer Haley had recommended. This conversation did not mean that I had already made a final decision, but I needed to know my options, my rights. After all, Dexter had already thrown me out of our shared home once. Who knew what would happen the next time he decided not to trust me? 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since Dexter and I had met in the park, and he had tried to convince me to reconcile. 3 weeks when I was gradually picking up the pieces of my life and starting to put it back together again. I no longer lived with Haley. I found a small but cozy studio apartment in the same neighborhood. The thing is, after our meeting, Dexter sent me a check for a considerable amount of money, "So you can get settled." At first, I wanted to return it, but Haley convinced me not to. "It's not a handout, Evelyn," she said. "It's the least he can do after throwing you out in the rain." I also found a temporary job at a small accounting firm. It was nothing special, helping with tax returns, basic audits, but it was better than sitting at home and brooding over a broken marriage. I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Melinda Schwartz, who was recommended by Haley. Our sessions on Tuesdays and Fridays became something of an anchor in my new life. You're describing a classic form of gaslighting, Dr. Schwartz said at our third session, when I told her how Noah was gradually eroding my self confidence. And interestingly, your husband was participating in this without even realizing it. Gaslighting? I'd heard the term, but never applied it to myself. Yes, it's a form of psychological manipulation when a person is made to doubt their own perception of reality, she explained. When things disappeared or broke, and your stepson denied any involvement, and your husband supported his version. This is a classic example. I sat there, stunned by this sudden realization. But why didn't I see this before? Because you wanted to believe the best. You wanted your family to be happy, Dr. Schwartz smiled with understanding. But now it's important to recognize these patterns so that they don't happen again in the future. With each session, I saw the toxic elements of my marriage more clearly. How Dexter, despite all his kindness, always put Noah's needs and desires before mine. How I gradually got used to downplaying my feelings in order not to create problems. How I learned to tiptoe around both of them, as if constantly apologizing for my existence in their lives. You know what struck me the most? I said in one of the sessions. How quickly he believed the worst about me. No doubt, no questions asked. 5 years of marriage, and he just threw me away like garbage. And what do you think that says about your relationship? Dr. Schwartz asked. That the trust was always one-sided, I finally answered. I trusted him completely, and he may never have truly trusted me. This conclusion was painful but liberating. It helped me realize that the decision I had made was the right one. I deserved more than a relationship built on a shaky foundation. Outside of therapy, my life was also changing. Haley introduced me to her friends, a group of nurses from her hospital, who quickly accepted me into their circle. We organized girls' nights, with wine and movies, went to yoga, and sometimes just met for coffee after work. Their support was invaluable to me. They never asked about Dexter unless I started the conversation, never gave unsolicited advice, and were just there when I needed them. I became especially close to Tessa, a reserved brunette with penetrating green eyes, who had also gone through a difficult divorce a few years ago. You know what helped me, she said one day, when we were sitting in a cafe after a yoga session, when I finally realized that I didn't have to forget or forgive what happened. I just had to move on and create a new life. Her words resonated with me. I really didn't have to forgive Dexter just because he admitted his mistake. I could accept his apology and still choose the path that was best for me. While I was rebuilding my life, events were also unfolding in Dexter's home. Eleanor, with whom I kept in touch, kept me informed of what was happening. Dexter hired a computer security specialist to look into it more thoroughly, she told me during our lunch meeting, and they found a lot more than they expected. It turns out that Noah hadn't just been stealing money for the last 3 months. He'd been doing it for almost a year, just less noticeably, and not just from the company. He's also been taking money out of Dexter's personal account. Oh my God, I whispered. How's Dexter taking it? Hard, Eleanor sighed. He's devastated. He feels like he's let everyone down, Caroline, you, even Noah. He says he didn't notice how his son had become this way. I felt an unexpected stab of sympathy for Dexter. Despite everything that had happened, I knew how much he loved his son. He's moody, angry. He refuses to see a therapist, even though Dexter insists. And he refuses to go to boarding school. Eleanor shook her head. It's all my fault. I should have intervened sooner when I noticed his manipulations. Don't blame yourself, I squeezed her hand. Noah made his choice. It's been 3 weeks since Dexter and I last spoke. I was even starting to think that maybe he'd come to terms with our breakup. But then he called. Evelyn. He sounded hoarse, as if he hadn't slept for a long time. We need to talk. I found a lot of things. About Noah. Can we meet? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just say no, to continue building my new life without him. But the other part of me knew that this conversation was inevitable. Okay, I finally said. Let's meet at Cafe Lavender tomorrow at 4. Lavender was a quiet, cozy place, public enough for a comfortable meeting, but with separate tables where we could talk privately. I arrived a little early, ordered tea, and waited, nervously picking at my napkin. In my bag was an envelope with the documents my lawyer had prepared. I wasn't sure if I was going to give them to Dexter today, but I wanted to be prepared. He came in at 4 sharp, always punctual. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, but dressed neatly as always. My heart clenched at the sight of him. After all, I had loved this man for 5 years. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," he said, sitting down across from me. "Of course," I replied neutrally. "You said you found something about Noah?" Dexter nodded, pulling a folder out of his briefcase. "I hired a specialist. We found everything. How Noah hacked my password. How he stole money for a year. How he faked messages." He ran a hand through his hair. "God, Evelyn, I can't believe I was so blind. That my own son—" "I'm sorry," I said sincerely. "I know how painful this must be for you." "He admitted everything," Dexter continued. "At first he denied it, of course. But when I showed him all the evidence—" He paused. "Do you know what he said?" "You always loved her more than me." I just wanted her to go away. I was silent, not knowing what to say. "That's not true, of course," Dexter added. "I always put him first." "Maybe too much so." I nodded in agreement, but I didn't want to go into it further. "What now?" I asked. "Noah agreed to therapy, and a boarding school eventually. He'll be leaving next month." Dexter took a deep breath. "But that's not what I wanted to talk about. Evelyn, I'm so sorry for what happened, about the way I treated you. I don't know, blinded, scared, but that's no excuse." He reached across the table as if to touch mine, but stopped halfway. "I want to make it right. I want you to come home. We can start over, without Noah in the house. I'll go to therapy on my own. We can go together. Please, Evelyn, I love you." His eyes pleaded, and for a moment I was tempted. To agree, to return to my normal life, to the man I still loved despite everything. But then I remembered those weeks of therapy, the conversations with Haley and Tessa, my own conclusions. "Dexter," I began quietly, "I believe you're sorry. And I still feel something for you. But what happened between us showed me something important about our marriage. It showed me how easily you believed the worst about me, and I don't know if I'll ever forget the way you looked at me then, with such disgust and contempt. I didn't mean to." "I know," I interrupted. "But you did. And it's not just about what happened that day. It was just the culmination of many little moments when you chose Noah over me, when my feelings and needs came second." "What is it?" Dexter asked, although I think he already knew. "Divorce papers," I answered, trying to keep my voice firm. "I'm not asking for anything but what I owned before the marriage and half of our joint account. The apartment, the car, the business. It's all yours." Dexter stared at the envelope as if it might explode. "Are you sure this is what you want?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I replied, feeling strangely relieved to finally say it out loud. "I need to move on, Dexter." "We both do." He slowly took the envelope and put it back in his briefcase without opening it. "I understand," he said, though his eyes said otherwise. "But if you ever change your mind, I'll let you know," I promised, even though I knew that wouldn't happen. We parted calmly, even with a certain warmth. A short hug goodbye, a promise to stay in touch. But when I returned home, I felt that I had turned an important page in my life. I closed one door and opened another. However, the peace did not last long. The next day, I received a call from Eleanor, who sounded concerned. "Noah knows about the divorce," she said without introducing herself. "Dexter told him last night." "What happened?" I asked, feeling my whole body tense. "He made a scene. He broke a few things. And then he said something disturbing." What did he say? That you're going to regret this. That he's not going to let you just walk away and ruin everything. Eleanor paused. Evelyn, I think you should be careful. Do you think he's capable of harming me? I asked, feeling my heart pounding. I don't know, she answered honestly. I wouldn't take any chances. I thanked her for the warning and made myself a strong cup of tea, trying to calm down. Could Noah really do something? Or were these just empty threats from a teenager who felt he was losing control? The answer came faster than I expected. That same evening, I received a series of text messages from an unknown number. Do you think you've won? He will never be yours. You will regret this, believe me. And then, most disturbingly, I know where you live. I sat there, frozen with fear, looking at the phone screen. Then, with trembling hands, I took screenshots and sent them to Haley, Eleanor, and, after some hesitation, Dexter. His response came almost instantly. I'll deal with him. Are you safe? Yeah, I replied, but I'm going to go to Haley's for the night. Okay, keep me posted. I quickly gathered the essentials and drove to Haley's, who greeted me with a hug and a glass of wine. This guy is seriously sick, she said as she looked at the messages. And what am I going to tell them? My 17-year-old stepson sent me some nasty messages? I shook my head. They won't do anything. At least record it, Haley insisted. If he continues, you'll have proof of the previous threats. I agreed and filed a police report the next day. As expected, the officer was polite, but not overly concerned. Family quarrels, teenage angst, nothing serious. But he registered my statement and advised me to apply for a restraining order if the threats continued. I spent 3 days at Gale's, during which I received several more messages, each more disturbing than the last. Then they suddenly stopped. Eleanor said that Dexter had taken Noah's phone and computer away from him and put a 24-hour watcher on him. For his own safety, he explained. He realizes how serious this is, Eleanor said, and he's sending Noah to boarding school next week instead of next month. I was relieved, but I still wasn't sure I could go back to my apartment. What if Noah really knew where I lived? What if he escaped from the warden? Move in with me, Eleanor suggested when we met for lunch. I have a big house, lots of space. I'd love the company. Eleanor, I can't, I objected. It's too much. Nonsense. She cut me off in her trademark no-questions-asked tone. You're almost like a daughter to me. And it's only temporary until Noah leaves. I agreed, grateful for her support. But during our conversation in the restaurant, another idea came up. Evelyn, Eleanor said as we finished our coffee. I've been wanting to suggest something to you for a long time. My friend Marjorie lives in Portland. She owns a small consulting firm and is looking for an experienced accountant. I told her about you, and she was interested. Portland? I was surprised. That's on the other side of the country. Exactly. Eleanor looked at me penetratingly. Maybe you should consider starting from scratch, away from all those memories. I sat there, stunned by this proposal. Move? To another city? I realize that this is a big decision, Eleanor continued, and I don't want to pressure you. But if you're interested, I can arrange a phone call with Marjorie. And, she hesitated, I would like to help you financially if you decide to go. Eleanor, no. I shook my head. You're already helping too much. And besides, I can't accept money from you. Why not? She raised an eyebrow. You're part of my family, Evelyn, no matter what happens between you and Dexter. And I want you to be happy and safe. I looked at this elegant, strong woman who was offering me a new beginning, and I felt something inside me respond to the idea. Maybe it was time to start over, to build a new life where no one knew me as Dexter's wife or the victim of Noah's deception. I'll think about it, I finally said. I'll really think about it. As I walked back to Eleanor's house, I felt a strange excitement. For the first time in a long time, I was not looking back at my broken marriage, but forward to new opportunities, new horizons. Perhaps Portland was exactly what I needed. A new beginning, a chance to turn from victim to victor. The morning sun flooded into my kitchen, playing on the glass surfaces and reflecting in my coffee cup. I sat at the small table by the window, enjoying the quiet start to the day and reviewing work papers. It's been 10 months since I moved to Portland, 10 months of freedom and a new beginning. My move was not an easy decision, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. With Eleanor's help, despite my objections, she insisted on financial support. I rented a small but cozy house on the outskirts of the city. It had a small garden and a veranda where I liked to drink coffee at dawn. The job Eleanor found for me turned out to be much more interesting than I expected. Marjorie Henderson, a close friend of Eleanor's, ran a small but successful marketing agency. When I admitted that my background was more in finance, she just waved her hand. A good accountant with an analytical mindset is exactly what marketing needs. Numbers will tell you more about the effectiveness of campaigns than any focus groups. That's how I became a financial analyst at Henderson Marketing. It was hard at first, a new field, new challenges, but gradually I discovered a flair for marketing strategies. My approach was different from others. Instead of intuitive decisions, I offered solutions backed by numbers. And it worked. The divorce ended quickly and painlessly as such a process can be. Dexter did not dispute any of my claims, even added a few points in my favor. When it was all over, I felt a strange relief, as if I had thrown off a heavy backpack that I had been carrying for years. Doubts, fear, the constant need to prove my worth. All of this is in the past. We kept in touch with Eleanor, not too close, but warm. She would call once every 2 weeks, ask how I was doing, tell me a little about her life. She didn't talk much about Dexter and Noah, and only if I asked. "Noah's at boarding school," she said during our last conversation last week. "He seems to be doing well there. At least that's what Dexter says." "And how is Dexter?" I asked, feeling a slight stab. Not pain, more like a subtle echo of old feelings. "He's expanding, opened 3 new stores," Eleanor answered. "But he's lonely, Evelyn. I don't think he'll ever fully recover from what happened." I didn't know what to say. Part of me sympathized with him. He had lost his wife, lost his trust in his son. But another part of me reminded him that he had made his choice when he believed Noah instead of me. That morning, as I finished my coffee and got ready for work, I had no idea that the past would soon come back to haunt me. The phone rang as I was closing the door. "Evelyn?" Dexter's voice sounded just like I remembered, maybe a little quieter. "I'm in Portland on business, and I'd like to see you, if that's okay." My heart skipped a beat. "Why, Dexter?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "There are a few financial matters that are best handled in person," he replied. "And I'd like to talk, just for half an hour." I hesitated. On the one hand, I had created a new life, finally freed myself from the past. On the other hand, maybe this was an opportunity to finally put an end to it, to get a complete ending. "Okay," I finally said. "Meet me at the Pine Beach coffee shop at 2. Pine Beach was a cozy coffee shop not far from my work, crowded enough to make me feel comfortable, but not so noisy that it interrupted the conversation. I arrived a little early, ordered green tea, and sat by the window. Dexter came in at 2 o'clock, sharp, always punctual. He looked a little older than I remembered, with more noticeable gray hair on his temples, but just as well-groomed and elegant. For a moment, our eyes met, and I felt a strange combination of familiarity and alienation, as if I were looking at someone I knew in another life. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, sitting down across from me. "You mentioned financial matters?" I asked, deciding to get straight to the point. He nodded, taking an envelope out of his briefcase. "It's about our joint investment account. It's still active, and since your name is still on the paperwork, you need to sign these papers to officially relinquish your share." I took the papers and skimmed them. "Can I take them with me and return them later?" "Sure," Dexter said. "There's no rush." We were silent for a moment. He looked at me with a strange expression. A mixture of sadness, pity, and something else I couldn't decipher. You look good, Evelyn, he said finally. Portland seems to be suiting you. Yeah, I smiled easily. I like it here. New city, new job, new life. I'm glad. He stirred his coffee without looking at me. I. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about how I ruined everything. I was silent, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to say that everything was okay, that I forgave him, but it would have been a lie. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't feel bitter, but the scars remained. Noah confessed, Dexter continued after a pause. Not right away, of course, but after a few months of therapy, he began to realize what he had done. He's truly sorry, Evelyn. I'm happy for him, I said sincerely. It's the first step toward healing. He asked about you. Dexter looked up. He wanted to know if you were okay? Or if you're happy. I hesitated before answering. I'm fine, Dexter. More than okay. I've found my way. I can tell, he smiled weakly. You've always been strong, stronger than I ever thought you would be. We talked for another half hour or so, about his business, my new job, a little about Noah and his progress at school. It was strange to talk so calmly, almost like old friends who hadn't seen each other for a long time. No bitterness, no accusations, but also without the closeness that we once had. When we said goodbye, Dexter held my hand in his for a moment. Evelyn, I know it's too late to change anything, but I want you to know that I'm really sorry. And I still. Don't, Dexter. I interrupted him gently. And it's the right thing to do. He nodded, understanding. We exchanged our last pleasantries, and he left. I watched him disappear behind the door of the coffee shop and felt strangely relieved, as if the last thread connecting me to the past had finally been cut. On my way back to work, I thought about how my life had changed in the past 10 months, about the new friends I'd made in Portland, especially Beth, my neighbor, a gardening enthusiast who taught me how to grow my own herbs, and Liam, a colleague from work with whom I often had lunch together, discussing everything, and of course, about Mason Donovan, the head of our creative department and divorced father of 9-year-old Sophie. We met 3 months ago while working on a big project. He was the exact opposite of Dexter, open, emotional, with a loud laugh and a habit of gesturing when he was excited about an idea. I loved his energy, his devotion to his daughter, and his ability to find joy in the smallest things. Our relationship developed slowly. First, working lunches, then a chance meeting in the park on Sunday. He was with Sophie and I spent half a day with them helping to fly a kite. Then, movies, dinners, long conversations over coffee. Mason knew about my past, not all the details, but enough to understand why I was in no hurry to start a new relationship. He didn't push, didn't demand more than I could give. He was just there for me, respecting my boundaries and my pace. You know, Evelyn, he said one day as we sat on the banks of the Columbia River, some things can't be forced. They just need time to develop naturally. I knew he was not only talking about us, but also about my healing from the past. When I returned home after meeting with Dexter, I had a surprise waiting for me, a letter from Noah. I immediately recognized his handwriting on the envelope. For a while, I just stared at it, not knowing if I wanted to read it. What could he have written that would matter to me? But curiosity won out. I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Dear Evelyn, it took me a long time to get up the courage to write to you. You may not want to read this at all, and I will understand. But I have to try. I want to apologize for everything I've done. I know that a simple "I'm sorry" won't make up for the pain I've caused. But I am really sorry. Therapy has helped me realize how toxic and manipulative my behavior was. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I am aware of my faults and am working on myself to become a better person. Your father told me that you live in Portland and are doing well. I'm happy for you. You deserve to be happy after all you've been through. Sincerely, Noah. I read the letter several times, trying to understand my feelings. There was no anger or resentment, just a slight sadness for what could have been if Noah and I had been able to find a common language, and relief that he seemed to be changing. I replied briefly, Noah, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your honesty and the fact that you are working on yourself. This is an important step. I wish you all the best, Evelyn. No promises of forgiveness, no offers to keep in touch, just a polite acknowledgement of his efforts and sincere wishes. That was enough. That evening, sitting on the veranda and watching the sun go down, I reflected on my journey, about how my painful experience made me stronger, taught me to value myself and my independence, about how I found the courage to start over, to build a new life on my own terms. My phone vibrated. A message from Mason. Are we still on for our date tomorrow? Sophie already packed her backpack for the hike. I smiled. Tomorrow, I was planning to hike with Sophie on one of Portland's many trails, our first real family activity. Sure, I said. I'm looking forward to it. Putting the phone down, I looked up at the stars that were beginning to appear in the evening sky. I didn't know what the future would bring. Would my relationship with Mason develop into something more serious? Would I find my true place here in Portland? Would I ever be able to trust completely again? But I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the scared, confused woman who stood in the rain in front of the closed door of my house 10 months ago. I was stronger, wiser, more confident, and whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it with an open heart and a clear mind.